So if you remember back in January when we were talking about our progress on the food security plan, there were the recommendations for stabilized and enhanced funding for food assistance providers and services, food assistance programs and services, which at the time we also paired up with expanding food production opportunities. And what we touched on at that time were the various grants that through the county and through various foundations, we were able to arrange to support food assistance and food security efforts during COVID-19. So there were the emergency food access grants, the provider capacity building grants, the Food for Montgomery Fund, resilience building grants, the Farm to Food Bank capacity building grants, and the resident and community food production gardening grants. So for those of you who are familiar or not so familiar with the food security plan, that came from the recommendation to strengthen grant making processes, county and private foundations. And many of those recommendations, some of them, the grant process and the funding process has kind of changed with county government since that time. So these about moving into multi-year, into the base budget, that has already happened. But there were also recommendations of requiring funding requests from an organization providing food assistance to cite a finding in the food security plan and to address that as part of their strategy, how they will overcome the associated barriers to align with the food security plan. And also, sorry, I skipped ahead one. To create shared standards for application and reporting requirements and processes, as well as information sharing for county and municipality food assistance grants to build efficiency, create interconnected funding strategies and goals, more effectively measure progress, increase collaboration, and enhance impact of investment. And then there was also partnering with private foundations, for example, the Community Foundation, the Healthcare Initiative, and the business community to amplify county funding of food programs. So in line with those recommendations, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Our meeting today is mostly focused on grants. And so the first thing I will double check again, if Leslie has joined us, I'll let her start. And if not, we will come around back to her. Okay, I don't see her there. All right, instead then, I am going to introduce, let me just find everything in here. Megan from the Institute for Public Health Initiatives is going to talk to us basically about Grants 101. And I just wanted to say this was a presentation that Megan had provided to the Prince George's Food Equity Council. And some of us from the Food Council saw that call, and it was just a really great presentation, a really lot of good background information for those of you who the grant making process might be new, or maybe you don't have dedicated staff to do. So Megan just had a lot of great ideas, things to be aware of, resources. So I'm really glad that she could be with us today to share her knowledge and share that information. And there will be time for questions after. So I'm just going to roll it over now to Megan. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So before I joined the Institute for Public Health Innovation as our development director, I worked for a foundation on the Eastern Shore that funded the Montgomery County Food Council many years ago. So it's really exciting to reunite with the council this morning. This afternoon, I see a lot of familiar names and faces, and just to see the growth that the council has had since I left the foundation to today, it's incredible, and you are doing tremendous work. So I'm really excited to be here and speak with all of you. I'm going to give a very high level, basic overview of the grant application process. But there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions that are specific to your unique needs, like please don't hesitate to ask those. Every foundation, every process is different. So happy to answer more like in the weeds questions if you have those. All right, so I think of grants as coming from like two main buckets. One is government, so that's federal, state, local funding sources, like local, so like county or town funding, and then foundation, so that's corporate, independent, or community foundations. And corporate is like the business side or the grant making side of business. So the first step when you're looking for opportunities is doing research. So sometimes that comes in the form of just really paying attention to the RFP or an RFA that's released. Oftentimes that's coming from government sources, and that will include any question and specific information that you could ever imagine related to that specific opportunity. So when you're going through the RFP, you know, it's looking at how is the entity describing the work? Are there award ceilings? How many awards are going to be made? What is the application process, and what are they looking for that completed package? If there isn't an RFP available, then it's, you know, going to a website and really familiarizing yourself with the foundation's priorities and grant making guidelines, looking at past and recently awarded grants. That is in terms of assessing like the projects that are getting funded, but also the average award size. And if none of that's available on their website, because some foundations are really great about including all of that, but some foundations just are not updating their website on a very regular basis, you can create a free account on GuideStar and look at the most recent 990s. And so you're not going to have a super in-depth level of like detail on a 990, but you'll see the entity that's getting funding, how much were they awarded in that tax year. And usually it also provides like a very generic description of what that funding project was. All of that's really important because it helps you decide whether this is a good use of your time and a good return on investment. So like the decision on an ROI really is unique to each person. But when I'm looking at an opportunity, what I look for is understanding what the application process is going to look like. Is it a really intensive process? And then understanding what's the potential in terms of the award size. And if I end up spending more of the organization's resources pulling the application together than I would be getting in terms of the potential award, then I have to think through with my team whether that's a good use of our time. Sometimes it is because, you know, there's other ways of looking at success. So it's introducing yourself to a funder, or maybe the application looks intense, but most of the information is already pulled together because of a previous proposal that you worked on. So it's not a yes or no necessarily, but it's definitely something to think about when you have to decide how you're using your time. And so, you know, things that funders look for is whether you have your 501c3 status. And if you don't, whether you have a fiscal sponsor. So that's an entity that does have a 501c3 status that you're allowed to use their EIN for and apply on behalf of. Whether your organization's healthy in terms of management, finances, operations, whether you have diverse revenue sources, and then also whether there's support from leadership and or the board. Some applications require written approval from the board. And if they require that, that'll all be outlined in the instructions to the potential applicant. And so the grant process is pretty straightforward. Some foundations have a two-step process. The foundation I worked for had one. So it starts with an LOI or a letter of inquiry. And then once you make it through that round, then it's the proposal process. Some foundations go straight into a proposal process. All of that will be hopefully shared on the foundation's website. And so a letter of inquiry, if it's required, is just an introduction of your work to the organization. You don't have to write a 100-page dissertation and I don't even know anything about dissertations, so I don't know why I just used that reference, because I'm pretty sure they're probably longer than that. But you don't need to write a novel when you're writing an LOI. It's really just an introduction. It's the beginning of the conversation. They should be brief, usually around 1 to 2 pages, and being as succinct as possible. So you're introducing your organization, you're giving an overview of the community needs, and you're providing an overview of the general project and solution that you're proposing. Sometimes LOIs are submitted via a grant system, so they look like a very abbreviated proposal. Other times you have to write a full letter to the foundation. And then whether you make it through the LOI process or the foundation requires you to just start at the application process. Applications typically look for your organization's background, an understanding of the problem and need statement, an overview of your target audience, the purpose of the request, how you will accomplish the project, why you're uniquely positioned. So this is where you would talk about your capacity, and then your goals and objectives with the proposal. And if you submit an application, or if you're submitting a proposal and you submitted an LOI previously, so this would require taking that information to a whole new level. So providing very detailed understanding of what's going on and why you are uniquely positioned to accomplish what you're proposing. And so some common attachments, are a list of the current board of directors, most recent board minutes, key staff resumes or biographies, your organizational budget, the project budget, an audit or 990, your IRS letter, and potentially letters of support. And all of that will be outlined in either on the website or in the RFP, but those are just some standard attachments that they'll look for. And some, general tips, when you're working for a nonprofit, I find even for myself, I'm so in the trenches on the work that sometimes I have to really take myself, take a step back and think through how do I describe the work in a way that anyone, whether they have a background on this issue or not, can understand, so that it's easily digestible and it's clear and succinct, and the funder, whoever is reviewing the application, is able to, walk away from the proposal with a clear understanding of my organization and the work I'm proposing. And what is also really important is when you're doing the research, picking up on the key words that foundations or an RFP is using to describe the work and threading some of that language throughout your proposal. And then following the directions on the funder's website. I know that sounds really simple, but that's really important, and not everyone does that. Creating a timeline to organize your tasks and a submission checklist, that this helps take the burden off of you the day that it's due. I can't tell you how many times that, because of all the work that's already going on, plus you're trying to submit a proposal, sometimes proposals don't get submitted until a few minutes before they're due, and having a submission checklist to look back on really helps take the stress off of whether you're potentially missing an attachment that you didn't realize you didn't upload or anything like that. And then keeping it simple and make sure to format to the grant system. I personally work in a Word document until it's time to formally submit my application. And if I am copying and pasting and realizing the system is formatting what I've just uploaded in a weird way, it's really important to take the time to space things out and make sure it's easy to read. It becomes really hard on the grant reviewer when that's not done, because oftentimes you're one of like 50, 80 applications that they're reviewing, and whatever you can do to consciously or unconsciously make it as easy on them, I think is really important. Also, just taking time to revise and edit, ask your peers to review and provide comment. And I would avoid calling and emailing the day of the deadline if possible. Sometimes that's unavoidable, but it's just, there's just so much going on that day that if you need help, it's just easier if you've scheduled yourself with enough time to be able to ask any technical assistance issues that you're having a few days before that deadline. And so now you've gotten a grant, what happens next? So you'll review your award letter and the grant agreement thoroughly. make note of any reporting and compliance requirements. Some foundations will send reminders in advance of reporting that's due. Others will not. It's really important to accept accountability and try to set reminders for yourself so you're submitting grant reports in advance of deadlines where you're not relying on any reminders from the foundation because things come up and they've already outlined it in the grant agreement. Making sure that you're following any acknowledgement and press release related requirements. So it's how you're using the funders' logos, how you're acknowledging the funds, keeping track of your progress and impact stories throughout that project year. So even if you just spend a few minutes a day or a few minutes a month, just writing down like some of the high level successes or challenges of the implementation during that previous month, that really helps when you have to pull together a 6-month or a 12-month report. And then proactively communicate with funders if you're running into implementation challenges or need report extensions. This will all be outlined in your grant agreement, but it's really important to make sure that, if you have to shift how you're allocating funds, that you're getting that approved and in writing before you spend the money. Most funders will be as flexible with you as possible, but it's just really important to not do anything without communicating with them if that's what they require. So what happens if an application is declined? Funding cycles can be really competitive and you can follow all the directions. You could put the most beautiful application together, have everything right, and still get declined, and it has no reflection on you or your work. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. There's so many other variables that we have no control over. And so that unfortunately is just one of them. Take time to review feedback or ask the program officer for advice if you're comfortable doing that. If you're working with a team, make note or learn from any weaknesses in the application process. Maybe you didn't give yourself enough time to develop the proposal, and that's fine. Sometimes we're trying to pull things together quickly, and that's just the nature of it. But making note of anything that didn't feel right or things that felt really great that you want to make sure you build into future application processes. And if you're in communication with the program officer, definitely ask them for recommendations of other funders that might be interested in your work. They want to support the community just as much as you're working to support the community. And so definitely think of them as a partner and ask if they can help you figure out, who would be a good right fit and if they would be willing to make an introduction for you. So that's that. That was a lot to throw at you, but I'll share my slides with Anne-Marie afterwards. That way you have that information to pull from for future reference. But does anyone have any questions?
Just so you know, Megan, I'm going to be looking through the chat. I don't think I saw anything yet, but people should feel free to raise their hand if they have a question that they'd like to ask Megan, or to put it in the chat and we will field it from there.
I know that was a very basic, high level. If you have very specific questions related to your work, I'm happy to talk with you on here or offline if you have any specific needs.
And that was going to be part of my question for our food security community, not for Megan, but, where do we take this now for you, to kind of meet that goal about, providing resources and training on grants, kind of what level of comfort do you have with them? Do you feel that there's more training that we could help provide, individual assistance? I know at one point, and Megan, I apologize if I'm kind of outing your services, but at one point with Prince George's County, they did provide some direct slots to sign up for to get some grant writing assistance. So we could certainly look into whether that could be a possibility. And also, like I said, if there's just further training that you would like to see come out of this, where do we need to go from here? So, but I really appreciate, oh, we've got Mary Kirkland, raise your hand, please.
Hi, I really appreciate this presentation because we are in the midst of, we just received 2 applications that we're going to be writing grants for. And I was just last week on Friday, I was looking up, trying to find a course on how, the best way to write grants and things like that. So that's something I would definitely be open to. I wrote my first grant last year and it was a little wasn't challenging. Well, it was challenging because I never had done it before, but we got through the process. We did get the grant, but I just think it would be helpful to have a course or something that's a little more in depth about how to write them, so that anybody can actually do it.
That's great. I also,
Congratulations.
yeah.
Thank you.
Paolo had a question in the chat. Can you contact the same organization if they rejected your grant proposal for whatever reason and submit another grant? What is the etiquette after getting rejected? That's a great question.
That's a great question. Yes, you definitely can reapply. Definitely, I would, if you're thinking of applying for the same thing that you were rejected on, I would definitely reach out to the program officer or the point of contact in advance, just to kind of get some feedback, share what you're observing on the ground, why this continues to make sense, and see if you can get some feedback to help incorporate whatever guidance that they have on the front end to make your application stronger for this next iteration. But absolutely, you can certainly reapproach a funder, because some of it, will come down to, what are the needs, how much funding they have available, and if they have to restrict the money for very specific things.
I see a hand up for My City.
Yes, hi. Just to recap kind of what the last person said. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, some training would be good. Maybe some more direct training. Maybe we create you create a grant, and then so that we can apply, and then we're critiqued on how it's written. I think that would be more direct training. I think that's where, for us, is where we struggle. Is, are we putting our point across to the work we're doing correctly? So I think that seems to be, I've been on several different grant trainings and stuff, and that still seems to be an opportunity, because every grant is different. How people read the question, how people respond to the question is different. So I think, if a training could be designed around maybe applying for a specific grant and then giving feedback on how, the different organizations apply for that grant would be helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Just brainstorming out loud, because I've been a part of groups where I've looked for exactly what you just described. Maybe it could be, maybe the question could be something generic, so that what comes out of the workshop provides some template usable language for the entities to then reuse in future applications. So it's how they're describing their work, what are their needs statements, those sorts of things. Maybe that's something, Anne-Marie, that could be helpful.
That sounds great. And, I want to go back to Megan's presentation where she, covered about kind of how to, and I think this goes in, Megan, I'll let you handle more of this, but someone in the chat had also asked about, how to make your grant really stand out and shine. And I just say, for me, I think a lot of it is going back to Megan's points of, using the language that is coming at you in the questions. In many ways, these are almost kind of like revisiting close reading exams from when we were in school, being able to match, to kind of put back in your answer what's being asked in the question, and showing how your organization, is in line with that organization's priorities. But I think For My City had a really good idea with that. And, a lot of it is, it's a communications, exercise, right? And thinking through how that carries out, in other communication channels that you have, that are not just grants, whether there are other presentations, annual reports, things like that. But Megan, I'll let you answer any other advice you have on making applications stand out and shine.
No, I think you covered the basics. It's just really, translating your work in the way that, writing about your work in the way that the funder is writing about theirs, so they see the connection. I did want to back up in the chat. Someone was asking about where we can find grant opportunities. So I just wanted to share that, there's not one clear source to look for. So if I was prioritizing what lists to look for in terms of funding to cover Montgomery County, depending on whether, so there's federal listservs that you can sign up for that is specific to federal grant opportunities. The state of Maryland has some lists out of the governor's office where you can sign up and they'll share grant opportunities. Same with the DC governor's office. And then I would triage and think about the local or place-based funders that overlap with Montgomery County and sign up for their list. And so I think the Greater Washington Community Foundation is potentially one of those, maybe. Rural Maryland Council potentially. Just thinking of what are the individual foundations and to sign up for their listservs. And I should also say, I think there's also services that you can pay for, but I don't know how helpful those are. It might be that you're spending more money than you're actually reaping benefit for.
Any other questions for Megan? I see that Crystal was sharing some tips in the chat. Those are great, and we'll be sure to capture all of that and include it in the notes. And I do want to thank Elizabeth for reminding me. In the past, we've talked about, and in various trainings that we've attended, we've seen a lot of information about storytelling. And kind of those softer skills that really relate to writing grants and general promoting your organization overall. So I don't know, Megan, if there's anything you can add about that, how you've kind of seen that applied in grants that you've seen, but I'm also just curious, if trainings related to storytelling skills would be of interest to our community.
I think storytelling is a really important aspect that certainly translates into grants. I think the only point of caution I would make is that there is different language. You would frame a call to action differently than you would write a proposal. And to make sure that you're really careful about your audience when you're writing a proposal. And so that, I'm thinking of one proposal in particular that I remember many years later, which was from an animal rights group. And they wrote in a way that was really, it was clear that it would motivate their members to advocate on behalf of this bill they were trying to pass. But in the language that they used in the proposal, the ask and the needs got lost in some of the language that they were using. And so I think it's important to, and part of that would come out of the storytelling workshop, I would think, but really being mindful of your audience and making sure that what you're saying doesn't, what your needs are isn't getting lost in what you're trying to motivate, I guess.
I believe you're on mute, Miss Emery.
Thank you so much. So we do still have, we had about 10 minutes in the agenda, so feel free to keep sharing questions if you had them. I apologize, unfortunately, and I haven't heard back to see what happened, but Leslie Rice from the Maryland Department of Human Services grant does not appear to have been able to join us. Annette Jones, I knew she had reached out to me that she would not be able to come, but I am still going to share the links. I know we've shared them out in newsletters, but I am still going to share the links here for the statewide nutrition assistance equipment program and for the Maryland Emergency Food Program. I will say if you haven't applied for these in the past, if you haven't spoken to Leslie yourself directly, I had the opportunity to speak with Leslie and she was lovely and incredibly helpful. So if you are applying for that grant and have any questions, feel free to reach out to her. Annette in her emails was also incredibly helpful and happy to answer questions and speak to individuals who were applying and had any questions or concerns. So I am going to share those links in the chat now, so you have them. And of course, we will, as usual, follow up in the notes with this information. I will say that the one key piece of advice that Annette had given me was that unfortunately the MEFP funds are limited, and so that process is very competitive. The amount going into that program has just not increased over the years. So again, I think this is one of those scenarios, like Megan pointed out, that, you know, if you apply and you just don't get any, I would not take it personally as a reflection on your work. It is just the fact that funds are very limited for that program in particular. So I did just want to share that. That being said, I did not see any other questions in the chat. I don't see any other hands raised. So Megan, thank you so much for that presentation. Again, we will share your slides and the recording of that part of the presentation out with our community, but just thank you so much for being here today and sharing your knowledge. It seems like a really timely conversation for a lot of folks, so thank you. And now I'd like to move on to our policy update. JD, if you are on the call, there he is. Yep. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm JD Robinson. I'm the Anti-Hunger Program Coordinator for SNAP at Maryland Hunger Solutions. Going to give you kind of a brief policy update today as far as what's happening in the General Assembly and a very pressing matter that we are kind of keeping track of as we progress into March and April regarding SNAP emergency allotments. So, you know, we're in March of the General Assembly. So right now we're kind of looking into most of the Senate side hearings of a lot of the bills that we're looking at. Most of the House hearings at this point have passed as we're kind of moving into the middle portion of the General Assembly as we kind of look at trying to get things wrapped up before April, when kind of the bills that are introduced around that point in time are not usually going to see the light of day. So two bills I want to touch on really quickly and then talk a little bit more about some other ones. First is the Older Adult SNAP Supplement. This bill was introduced by Delegate Valentino Smith and Senator Waldstreicher of Montgomery County, Delegate Valentino Smith of Prince George's County. This bill would increase the current older adult SNAP minimum, which is currently $30 per month for anyone 62 years of age and older, to $45 a month, and lower the eligibility age from 62 to 60. This had the House hearing in late February. Unfortunately, what we're hearing from the delegate is that after discussion in committee, it has been cut down to size, unfortunately. So instead of the $45 a month, they're going with 40, and they are not really budging on the age from 62 to 60. Now we're hoping that the Senate hearing, which is has not been scheduled quite yet. I think it's currently still in reading by committee. It should be, I want to say, in being heard in finance, but I'll need to double check on that. We're hoping that the Senate hearing, we can at the very least convince them to push the age down from 62 to 60. We do have some new data that we're hoping to kind of get crunched in time for that hearing that basically shows that the fiscal note that was originally proposed, which was in the $5.7, $5.8 million range, is actually not quite that high and should be lowered to about 1.2 to 1.5 million, which, if is part of the holdup for increasing the minimum benefit for older adults, hopefully can kind of bring the discussion back to the fact that we've seen historic rises in food prices. We've all felt it. People on SNAP have felt it. And also, we want to combat the likely benefit cliff that is going to be happening when emergency allotments end sometime this year. And I'll be touching on that a lot more in greater detail in just a little bit. The second bill, which my colleague Julia Gross has been working on quite diligently over the past couple of months, really frankly the past year, is a pathway to school meals for all for Maryland. This is a bill that would essentially provide a kind of structure to Maryland's school meal funding programs to ensure that every child in Maryland that is attending a school that is eligible for free school meals is able to get a free breakfast and a free lunch. The Senate hearing for that is tomorrow at 1 o'clock in Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs. That is being introduced by Senator Young and Delegate, blanking on the name. But regardless, that Senate hearing is, this bill is large. It is to provide a school meal for every child in Maryland. And with that being said, the fiscal note is likely to be large as well. This is also coming in light of the recent decision by Congress to not extend federal waivers into the upcoming school year to continue to provide additional funding to schools throughout the United States to support feeding children. So the paid timing of that is, while extremely unfortunate, does light a little bit more of a fire under this incoming bill. So we're hoping for a really good hearing tomorrow and seeing what happens when it gets pushed out of committee. A couple of other bills we're taking a look at, the Maryland Farms and Families Fund, introduced by Senator Hester. I believe that was pushed forward out of committee favorable with some amendments. I need to double check again what the amendments are, but that bill is looking very healthy as far as where we stand right now. And then there's a couple of other bills. The SNAP for college students bill, I believe, just had its first hearing last week in the House. And this is going to extend the current eligibility requirements that are present under the federal public health emergency for college students. Essentially, right now, while the country's within this federal public health emergency, college students are able to get SNAP with expanded eligibility requirements, including having a $0 expected family contribution, being eligible for federal work study. This is a huge one. They don't have to be participating, they just have to be eligible. And of course, receiving the maximum Pell Grant. So it would basically extend those eligibility requirements within Maryland to continue beyond the end of the federal public health emergency, which would be huge for maintaining a lot of the current college student caseload when it comes to their eligibility for SNAP here in Maryland. And so that is the concentration of poverty school grant program. That is Senate Bill 971, House Bill 857, introduced by Senator Young and Delegate Resnick. And I apologize, the hearing tomorrow is at 1 o'clock in budget and taxation. Of course, with all the General Assembly stuff, you can tune in on, I think it's live streamed on YouTube, but because Senate hearings this year are in person, I'm not quite sure what that's looking like. So yeah, looking forward to that, fingers crossed. And then last but definitely not least is something that, again, we're kind of keeping an eye on, but we're not quite sure when the other shoe is going to drop. And this is the ending of SNAP emergency allotments in Maryland. So SNAP emergency allotments are a waiver that the USDA offers to every state to provide the maximum SNAP allotment for all eligible SNAP households. For example, if a household of one were to get onto SNAP in Maryland currently, they wouldn't receive a calculated benefit, they would receive the maximum amount for their household size, which for one person is $250, for a household size of 3, it's $430 a month in SNAP. This waiver is tied to the federal public health emergency existing. Now, there hasn't been a full official announcement from the Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level acknowledging an extension beyond March, but all of the evidence is pointing to a likely 3-month extension into June. So that means, great, we can continue emergency allotments here in Maryland. Unfortunately, because Governor Hogan drew down the previous in-state public health emergency, that technically ended last October. However, there has been a specific state emergency declaration that has pushed this through the end of March. That's the key point. We don't know if that specific emergency declaration has been pushed forward. And if it doesn't get pushed forward through the end of the federal emergency, we are likely to see emergency allotments end after April in Maryland. That means everyone in the state gets their benefits recalculated, and we can see households drop from $430 a month to the minimum of 20. Households of one drop from the maximum of 250 down to the minimum of 20. As it stands right now, looking at the data that the state has provided to USDA, the number of households that are receiving emergency allotments right now is about 80 to 85% of the total SNAP caseload. That's an astounding amount of folks, and is actually the highest percentage of emergency allotment households we've had in the state since the pandemic began. This program has been bringing in, on average, $50 to $60 million in additional SNAP benefits to the state every month since the pandemic started. And to forego it early when we don't need to, when we can continue to access it through the end of the federal public health emergency, basically get these federal dollars until we know that they are over, is a true oversight on behalf of the department and on behalf of the current administration here in Maryland. So we're going to start circulating a sign-on letter that I would ask you all to please, send far and wide, that we are going to send to Secretary Padilla of the Department of Human Services, as well as to Governor Hogan, to urge them to extend the in-state emergency. Don't put an end date on it. Just say until the federal public health emergency is over, because we know, sure, the state's opening back up, mask mandates are going to the wayside. We're looking at recovery, but we can't assume that we're recovering right now. We have to continue to access these resources at no cost to the state, as long as we can. So I'm happy to take any questions about some legislative pieces or about emergency allotments, and I'm going to go ahead and put the letter into the chat right now.
I have not seen any questions come up in the chat that you haven't covered already, but I do see Jennifer Renkema's hand up, so please.
Hi, I'm Dr. Renkema. I'm a food pantry director at Silver Spring Christian Reformed Church. We're in the Wheaton Kemp Mill area of Silver Spring, just to give you an idea. And I am wondering, I know a lot of the sign-on letters are usually targeted towards organizations. Is there a version of sign-on letter that could be for individuals? We have a lot of volunteers, but they aren't necessarily associated with an organization, and they might be very interested in signing on. As far as whether there's still an emergency going on, our pantry is seeing increases. We're back to early spring last year levels, and we had been dropping. So I would just really like to see an opportunity for individuals to sign on and contact the legislature and Governor Hogan about this as well.
I think we can definitely start to generate an individual sign-on letter. We're hoping. We've had talks with Delegate Valentino Smith's office, who was a major proponent in getting them continued last October. And I know the timing of this one's really difficult because of the General Assembly. We just know all of our representatives right now have their hands full with their own bills, but we're hoping to get either as many delegates as possible to send their own individual letters to Governor Hogan's office, or to have kind of a legislative sign-on letter as well. But I'll make sure to get an individual sign-on letter circulating for folks that, like you said, are not tied to an organization.
Thank you very much. That's great.
And Stephanie, I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat if you want to reach out to me directly as well.
JD, I appreciate both you and Jennifer highlighting advocacy efforts around this. One, because it's a great idea. And two, it's also just a little bit of a segue into what I was going to mention next. Just a reminder that the Food Council, does have an advocacy email that goes out every week. And if you would like to receive those emails, please sign up on our advocacy listserv. I did put the link to that in the chat. And I just wanted to share two additional things that the Food Council has done recently in relation to advocacy. And that was signing off on two letters, one of which was led by the Alliance to End Hunger. And that was to get a commitment from the White House to hold a conference on food, nutrition, hunger, and health. In 1969, the first and only White House Conference on Food, Nutrition, and Health resulted in an expansion of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and the National School Lunch Program, as well as the establishment of the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, otherwise known as WIC. So groups supporting this initiative believe that a new conference bringing together a wide range of stakeholders will be a key opportunity to aspire to and realize transformative change. The second letter that the Food Council signed off on was actually from JD's Maryland Hunger Solutions, and that was a Maryland-specific letter asking Congress to extend the USDA's Federal Nutrition Waiver Authority. As you know, schools across the country are currently providing free meals to all students and in ways that allow systems to work around supply chain, staffing, and other logistical issues. Not extending these waivers will result in many children not getting fed and in school systems having a harder time feeding those that they are able to provide food for. So just an update on what's happening on the Food Council side on those issues. Just check, make sure nobody had a hand or a question for JD or anything about policy. If not, we can move on. All right, great. I do want to ask at this time, I know Myra Derbyshire from the Food Security Task Force is with us, and she wanted to share a request.
Hi, everyone. It's Myra Derbyshire from the Food Security Task Force. It's nice to see everyone. I just wanted to share some information. The county has declared the month of March a COVID Appreciation Month, and the Food Security Week has been declared for March 27th through April 2nd. And the county is highlighting individuals and organizations that have provided resources to people and families in need all throughout the pandemic. So in response to this, we're asking our food assistance providers if you would like to meet with a member of our team on Zoom to record a about 2-minute video sharing a special success story or any other topic that you would like to share. And these videos will be posted on various social media channels within the county. We will have a release form that we will ask you to sign. And the purpose is to share the success of our food assistance providers in celebration of all of your resilient and courageous work over these past 2 years. And each session will be about 10 minutes long. So we will ask specific questions for you to answer and or share a special success story with us. Some of the questions that we will ask you are the name of your organization, your name and your role in the organization, and any other questions that come to mind, we will be sure to brief you before our session. So we do highly recommend practicing beforehand, before the sessions, to try to get it within that 2-minute time frame for so that we're able to record it. And we do, like I said, we will ask providers to sign some sort of release form. That way we have your permission to upload it onto our social media channels. And we're just really grateful for all of the hard work of our food assistance providers and for being the most amazing partners. And I would like to just send it off to Netta Squires, my incredible colleague, to just talk about one other effort that we have underway. Thanks.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much, Myra. So just to echo everything Myra just said, we really tremendously appreciate you and your work and are really excited to highlight so much of what you've done over these past couple of years. Another way we're going to do it, just recognizing that not everyone either wants to do videos or has time for it, but you may just have a quick moment to write something, even if it's a very short story, a short thank you, anything you really want. So we're going to send out a survey, and it's basically going to have a few very simple questions, and then offer you an opportunity to put anything in writing that you may want to, so we can share that also on social media throughout that week. And then, if you guys can think of anyone else who should receive the link to these, please feel free to share widely, and we would love to capture as many stories, wonderful moments, anecdotes, and anything you want to share to highlight all the tremendous work you guys have done. So thank you all again, and happy Monday.
Thank you so much, Myra and Netta. I hope that all of you take advantage of any of those opportunities to have your incredible work recognized and shared with the broader community of our county. So please do try to take advantage of those opportunities. I also wanted to ask one other person to speak for a moment, and that is Amy Beal from MCPS Community Schools. Amy couldn't join us at our last call, but many of you may remember I shared a slide with the schools that were participating in the community schools program. I will share that again today, and there's going to be a few updates on that coming in July. But I did want to give the opportunity for Amy to say hello so you could have a face to connect to the name. And I know a number of organizations have already reached out to her since that last meeting to let her know what work you are already doing with schools. So thank you for doing that, Amy.
You, and thank you for letting me join today. I apologize for not being able to make the last meeting. I've been often pulled into some things here and there. So just wanted to say hi. The community schools will be growing by 7 additional schools in July. Those schools are Belpre, Roscoe Nix, Hopper Mill, Brookhaven, Cresthaven, and Washington Grove. And I'm forgetting one, Cresthaven, Brookhaven, and there's one more on this list. Thank you.
I just shared my screen, so I'll help you figure it out. So we had Belpre, Cresthaven, Roscoe Nix, and then in the Brookhaven, Twinbrook, and Clopper Mills.
Yes, thank you. So those are our new schools starting July 1 for community schools. So we will be getting those up and running in the next several months and doing some hiring for those positions. So I appreciate your support. I will be sharing out with Anne Marie quite often on projects and things we're taking on to try to implement. So any feedback is always welcome. Any partnership and collaboration is always welcome. So feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted me to share, Anne Marie?
Nope, I'm just getting out of exiting my screen. There we go. There we go. Thank you so much. All right. Haven't had anyone new join us right now. I did want to also share, and apologies because of course with closing out my screen, I closed out my notes document to myself. So we'll take a moment there. I did just want to share a reminder. I hope that many of you have, I know that many of you have already taken advantage of the opportunity. And just a reminder, if you haven't yet, to please do so. If you are interested in receiving updates about food that is available from Amazon through the Alive partnership, which we've been forwarding you from the MAFRAC listserv, I just strongly urge you to sign up directly for the MAFRAC listserv updates. By time, those emails are only going out once a week. And I feel like there are times that by time he sends the email and it takes me to get that forwarded out to the list, the food has already been accounted for. So I really don't want you to miss that opportunity. Sometimes I'm just not at my computer or I'm in a meeting. Last week, it happened in the middle of the night. So even with my best intentions, I wouldn't have been able to get that to everybody. So I do just strongly encourage you to sign up for that listserv if you haven't already. Again, we will share that information with everyone. Kate Chance, I see your hand up.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm a faith liaison with Montgomery County. And back to the discussion about this being COVID Memorial Month, we are having an event next Monday at 7 p.m. honoring our faith leaders that have really stepped up during COVID and community leaders. And so I'll put information in the chat, but we would love to have you there. And that's it. Thank you so much.
And I see we have some new guests. So I do see Dr. Earl Stoddard on the call, and I'm guessing that means we are close to our time with the county executive.
Indeed, I think you'll be joining us here just in a minute or two.
Okay, great. I am going to take advantage then to get my notes document back. Thanks so much to Elizabeth for sharing that information in the chat. So you have that there. Like I said, apologies on my part. Let me just grab my document again. But of course, sorry, feel free, any questions for Amy or any other information that you would like to send her way, feel free to reach out in the chat or to Amy directly. Okay, and I knew that I had one more announcement to make. Actually, and I'm going to turn it over for that to Lucia Zagara, who I didn't get a chance to acknowledge before, our Food Recovery and Assistance Working Group chairperson. So Lucia, I'll take it to you.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say good afternoon, everybody. And is the county executive on yet, or?
I think we're still waiting. Just have another minute or so.
Okay, no, I just wanted to say thank you to him in a minute. But yeah, no, thank you everybody for coming to this talks, and please, your feedback is very, very much appreciated in terms of what you would like to see and what more topics you'd like to see in the future.
I think we just had somebody join. So let me see if it was just actually Myra again. In the meantime, I will put in one more plug, a reminder that we do have the Food Council's partner directory, which is separate from the food assistance resource directory. I know we have a lot of directories, it gets confusing. But for those of you that would like to share information with us so that you can be in touch with each other, this is the vehicle that we have to do that. So this resource will strengthen our network and build collaboration by facilitating connections between individuals and organizations engaged in Food Council convenings and initiatives. And that includes food assistance providers, entrepreneurs, farmers, community educators, advocacy leaders, and sustainability stakeholders. So we will put a link for that in the chat as well, and feel free to include your information if you haven't already.
And to add to what you're saying, Mary, I know that COVID has changed the times that you're serving the community, and also that a lot of organizations are serving in multiple languages. So reach out to us if you would like to update your listing for hours and what other languages you're supporting as well.
Great. So I'm sorry, I've seen a little bit of changes with attendees, so I don't know if that don't know if the county executive is in the process of joining or has joined and just waiting for us.
I'm here.
There he is. There we go. Welcome so much, County Executive Mark Elrich. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. This group did amazing work, and we're not done yet. Obviously, there's going to be more work to do. So thank you so much for everything. So just, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, we did have some members that, wanted to share some questions with you, but I first wanted to give you some time. If there were just general remarks you'd like to make, feel free.
So I have some general remarks. Food Security Week is the 27th through April 2nd. We're going to highlight it highlights individuals and organizations that provided necessities and other resources to people during this pandemic in particular. We, provided resources to support culturally relevant foods for people experiencing food insecurity. I will say that's something people had to learn about. It did not come naturally in some cases. We provided programs and resources to remove access barriers to fresh produce for seniors. It was, I went to a number of food distributions, and to see the breadth of the food that was being distributed was really welcoming. But I always felt like I wish we had more. Now I look at somebody carrying away a 22-pound box of, large vegetables and things like that, and think about, these people are probably hitting multiple sites in order to get the food they need for a week. And that was the reality we were dealing with. We have over 100 food assistance providers in the county, and that you all during this distributed 41 million pounds of food. That is no small thing. And yes, and over 27 million prepared meals. In a population of 1 million people, most of whom don't need that. That's a remarkable amount of food and meals that were distributed in the county. And the food assistance providers have served 89% of our county zip codes, and there's no way the county could have done this ourselves. This is one of the lessons that we've taken away from the pandemic, was moving toward hub models and relying more on community groups to do things rather than thinking the government could do everything. There was no way we would have been able to do it. We didn't have the staff. We couldn't have hired the staff. It would have been really challenging for us to have done what you all were able to do. And so going forward, we have a recognition, which is why I built the hubs into my budget, and I'm building them into my budget again, to make sure that we've got people at the community level who have deeper connections in the community, frankly, than we have, and who are more trusted in the community than the government necessarily is. And we want to make sure that we're able to take advantage of that going forward. So you all have helped us rethink how we do services in the county. I want to thank you for, helping us provide the nudge to do the kind of rethinking we had to do. You all stepped up to the plate. You were a conduit for getting so many resources and messages out to the public, including voting, housing, and other vital resource information. And that's another thing that, we want to maintain out of this, is the ability not just to serve people, but to communicate to people, and also to bring concerns back to us. I mean, we don't know what we don't hear about. And because you guys are so deeply embedded in the community, you were able to come back and tell us what you were seeing in the community and what people wanted us to know about the community. I think all that made us better at what we tried to do. And, food insecurity obviously surged during COVID, and that's why we created the Montgomery County Food Security Task Force. We realized very quickly that we were going to have to change, but also the government was going to have to do more. Waiting for charity to solve society's problems is a serious mistake. They don't have the resources to do it. They're good partners, and they're good when you can provide resources and use them to augment those resources with distribution. But, a model that looks at, how much charity has been given and relies on charity to provide food would have left us way short of what we needed to do. So we need to recognize, the limits of charity and the role the government has to continue to play. And then we don't get to walk away from this hoping that somebody else is going to deal with it. I've put a new office of food resilience that will continue in the county government. And so that partnership you have is going to continue going forward. And beyond the creation of the Office of Food Resilience, I'm also recommending enhanced grant funding for food assistance, another $4 million to continue to directly provide food to individuals and families most in need. And I want to assure you that $4 million is what's in the budget, because we don't know where this is going right now. If more is needed, more will be provided. We are in pretty good shape in the county right now. This budget is going to be the first budget I would call progressive that I've been able to put out there. It's the first budget that actually addresses growing need in the county. Just to put it in perspective, the last three budgets, the increase year over year was about 1%. That's it. $50 million a year is what got increased in the county budget. And that, when you consider the school system as part of that, that's not a lot of money to go around. So this is a budget that's not that constrained. So we're adding things in lots of places. We've identified, both weaknesses and needs. And I just want you to know that we're here to work with you. And my door is always open. Many of you have come through my door. I'm more than happy to talk with people. Like I said, you're closer to the need than I am. I get to go out in the community, but I visit your sites. I talk to people for a half hour. I don't do the work you do every day to the depth that you do it. So even though you may see me at places, it doesn't mean that I don't need, more information when you all have access to it. So I'll just close by saying, my door is open. My people are willing to work, and I'm willing to, get deeply into this myself. And thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, County Executive, for your leadership and for those remarks. I know that Lucia Zagara, the chairperson of this working group, wanted to just share a welcome quick, and then we can share a few of our questions. Lucia?
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I just wanted to say quickly, thank you, County Executive, on behalf of everybody in the call for all your support. And also thank you for including the Food Council in the town halls in Spanish, that we were able to provide information for our Spanish speaking community. And hopefully this continues on as, we're switching gears towards recovery, and all the support that you continue to giving us for all the organizations. So thank you very much.
Look, you all made us better. So there's no way I'm backing away from this. I think, your role will, I hope, become a permanent thing in county government. Long after I'm gone, I hope this structure of community engagement continues.
Our first question is going to be from Jennifer Renkema from Silver Spring Christian Reformed Church.
Thanks, Anne Marie, and thank you, Mr. Elrich, for being with us today. I'm just trying to pull up my question again. The county has been an invaluable resource for food assistance providers throughout the pandemic. So I want to start with a big thank you for that. The county has helped us to provide accessible, targeted, and meaningful resources, and the coordination allowed pantries to significantly alter operations and increase volume quickly and in a sustained way. Just for your information, for our particular pantry, what that meant is going from being open once a month for about 100 households to being open weekly. At the start of the pandemic, our projection was to do that for a few months, and we assumed we'd have about 100 households in a 2-hour block. You can guess that we were completely wrong. And in 2021, we averaged closer to 700 households a week. We saw some drop in that at the end of last year, but I'm going to get back to my question for the perspective on this one. We're grateful for all of that support for the community, and we continue to benefit from county resources. Sadly, after seeing some sustained decreases in food pantry attendance in the last half of 2021, our attendance is again rising and reaching levels that we last saw at the beginning of June. At the same time, as you know, federal and some of our county resources for residents and food pantries are lower than they were last year in June. And in light of those facts and the news that came out last week about the extra large state budget surplus, I'm wondering what the county is doing to advocate for funding from the state to go directly to low-income residents, and also to advocate for funding to target food insecurity.
We're going to continue to ask the state to support the broad range of programs that we do. It has struck me throughout this, the state is way underperformed in terms of what it's willing to put out on the street. It was always sitting on a pile of money Now that pile's grown to be a $7 billion pile. I don't think, as nice as it is to talk about tax cuts, you'd have one-time tax cuts. So one little bonus, and then we'd be back to normal. And that money's best used either for things that are emergencies or for building infrastructure for organizations that would last beyond, 1 year. So we're going to continue to push on that. We're also, what's in our budget, if the need exceeds that, then we will put more money in. So if you don't see, as much money as we had at the height of the pandemic, it doesn't mean that we're not willing to put more in if it turns out that we need it. So just consider this an open invitation to say, hey, we're running out of money, we need some more. Because as long as you're serving people, there's no justification for cutting this off. I get how people do budgets. As somebody who thinks about this from a moral perspective as opposed to a dollars and cents perspective, I don't like the structure, but I do know we have the flexibility. So we will continue to monitor what's happening out there and make sure that if you need resources, that we can support you with resources. And just thank you so much. How long did it take you to adjust 700 people from 100?
It went somewhat gradually, but it was a community effort. We have had support. Marla Kaplan has been amazing, but we had help from the county early on. We had help from local businesses. We've had help from other congregations, both local synagogues, the Catholic Church across the street, other churches in the area, and many, many individuals and individual donors. And that process, it ramped up over time, but yeah, we have, it's quite a process, and it's quite something to see in action. Yeah, and we've been helped in so many ways. Our parking lot is small, so being able to keep cars off the street has been a partnership with Mcps has helped out by offering some lot space at times. And we are currently using overflow parking over at the Wheaton Ice Rink. And so park and planning and the park police have also been helpful in this. We have just been so helped by the full breadth of the community and cannot express our gratitude to everyone who's been involved throughout this. So
thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sisse had our next question.
Thank you, County Executive, and to everyone in the Food Council. My question is like partly answered already, but I want to just channel it towards with the funding that is made available and possible in the county, what quota will be allocated to cater for culturally diversified ethnic food? Because basically the canned food and all other food materials we're getting, the helpful, grateful, but as the county is growing and also encouraging a lot of immigrants and many that we need in the food security that comes in and needs food, some of the food that we give out may not relevant to them specifically. So, and you're looking at what percentage of the funding that is made available will cater towards culturally appropriate ethnic food. Because I think sometimes we miss the word the ethnic. We're talking about culturally appropriate, relevant food, but there are ethnic varieties that can bring out many low-income residents in the county. They're not coming into the food. They're not coming for the food for food. They prefer to go back to work because sometimes the food that we have may not be relevant to their needs. And so what quota will be made available for them?
So, I mean, the county's participated in a couple different ways. We're a conduit for food that came from other people, and we don't control the free distribution of food, the people who've made donations to the county. And that's also true for some of the nonprofits that have been doing this work. They've been given the food that they get, and we don't necessarily have the ability to tell the donors that we only want this, we don't want something else. I mean, the food coming from donors is pretty much decided by the donors. To the extent that there are needs for ethnic foods, we've more or less left it to the groups that have gotten funding from us to make selections of what foods they're going to provide based on, the population that they're serving. So I've seen the food packages shift in some areas. I've, seen, rice replacing potatoes and, some more traditional produce rather than everything being American typical produce. But this is something where we really need, the partnership of the local providers. If we're providing food and buying it, then we need guidance about how much of what people think they need. And if the providers are providing it, they need to be thinking about what they need in their own purchases. But the county, I wouldn't even know where to begin to set a quota, because the quota wouldn't be uniform across the county. It's specific pretty much to regions of the county and specific to different groups in regions of the county. So we'd have to be, at least I think we have to be more flexible about what we're doing, but I don't think we can set a quota, because I don't know that a quota would get used, necessarily get used appropriately or wind up in the right place. That really is something we need to work with the local partners with. So if we can have those discussions, if folks who are dealing with this feel that, this is a struggle, let me know, and we can see what, if the county has a role to play, if we need to help you identify sources of culturally appropriate food or whatever else might help spread things out better than they're being spread out now.
Thank you very much, because I know Marla knows we sometimes how tormenting we can become to her sometimes in getting some of the produces, but thank you very much, Councilor Steve, and I think it's a discussion that needs to, to be discussed and something that needs to be considered greatly. And we're looking forward to that.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much time we have available left, but I did see Henrietta Jones's hand up if we had time for another question.
Yes, hi, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Hello, Governor Ehrlich. Yes, I have a question, just piggybacking off what Dr. Cesar said. I'm also a food provider targeting culturally appropriate food. And yes, the need for us to address this issue is grave. As he mentioned, we're very grateful, but looking at people who are immigrants, the Black and Brown minority community, in 1 week, we had 104 people needing culturally appropriate food. Our agency has done it a bit different because we do it through vouchers, where we're able to give vouchers and in partnership with a major agency in the county. And we're able to give vouchers that are in twofold. One, people are able to go and get food that is culturally caters to their, their culturally culinary diet. And the second is that we also support the local stores, international stores in their communities. But we are finding the need very, very grave. Looking at the balance between the traditional cultural food, the American, all of what we get, and those that do need the cultural food, there's a deep gap. And we're trying to deal with food insecurity. This comes back as a ripple effect on families. A mom can, from their cultural feed, whip 2 or 3 meals. But if we giving out food that they're not culturally adapted to, don't know how to prepare, especially when you look at somebody coming into the US who does not know how to prepare some of this food, it is a challenge. And we are not able to meet all of these needs. In my agency, we've had to kind of, give some, and the other month we give the other. So as Dr. Sase say, I think this will be a great issue to address and for us to talk more about, so we can see how we can work with partners who are already in the food distribution to kind of,
Yeah.
have more funding towards it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Judy.
Judy, yep.
Hi, I'm going to be
Hi.
real brief I'm going to be brief in the interest of time. Hi, Mark. Glad to see you on the call. Glad to see you in the community, really inspiring us to continue to do what we have to do. I just wanted to say thank you for. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say thank you for the comments you made today, specifically the comments of understanding that there's a traditional way to say, oh, there's a budgetary restraint, but also to realize that many of our residents, children, families have more month than money. And so for you to be able to say that you're going to make it happen, if it's not happening, it's going to make it happen, is very refreshing and inspiring for me to hear, because I know it's not just our agency, but all across the board. Even though we are getting better as far as the rates of COVID going down, many of our families are skyrocketing. So I'll be talking to you off board about some of the needs specifically that we have, because our numbers are skyrocketing as well. So thank you for being here on this call, and thank you for inspiring me once again. Thank you.
Judy, I saw the letter you wrote, and I don't want you to worry about, budgets are one-time things, that what you write in the moment. And if we had lived by our budgets, we wouldn't have done any of this stuff we just did, because it all would have been, that's not in the budget. So, we're going to continue to be flexible. The county's in a stronger place than it's been in years in terms of finances. That's why you're going to see a budget that is actually has decent, it's not a hold still budget, it's a moving forward budget. So we'll continue to work with you to make sure that nobody goes hungry. That was the thing about the pandemic. If you see some of the other stuff that I've done, like opening up the homeless shelter for 200 men and getting them off the street permanently, I wanted to make sure that, we can address the moral crises that we're dealing with and not treat them like budget issues. At the end of the day, I got to deal with the crisis. I can't hide behind the budget.
Amen. Thank you.
I did see just two more. I saw Marla's hand up, and I also saw a question in the chat. If there was any other information that could be shared about the Office of Food System Resilience, whether it would be part of HHS, what its mission was, and if a director had been named. But we can decide on the order of those.
I'll just say, like in general, there was a request that we deal with food insecurity, and we deal with the bigger issues of the food system. And we are going to do that. We have not named the director, I don't believe. And is it in HHS? I see Earl here. Is it in HHS?
It will not be in HHS. Actually, will be in our community engagement cluster. And we'll obviously the budget will be released tomorrow officially, and you'll see more details coming out thereafter. We are planning on a much broader conversation about the Office of Food Resilience during the food week that the county executive talked about towards the end of the month. So we'll be talking a lot more about this, but in short, the goal is it's going to help coordinate the government side of the food security battle, so we can have a better conduit into government to how we work with you all moving forward on the community side. And obviously there'll be a conduit for the dollars that the county executive talked about before, continuing to flow to the groups. So that's largely the mission. Yep. No one's hired yet, but it's going to be, you'll see it reflected in the budget tomorrow.
Marla, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Anne Marie, and thank you, Mr. Elric, for your wonderful words. No doubt, everybody on this call has been amazing the last 2 years. I do want to address the issue of the culturally appropriate foods. I know that we have certainly made an effort to provide as best as possible foods that are culturally appropriate. As everybody on this call knows, at the start of the pandemic, it was important to get food and food out to people who were panicking, who were hungry. And that's when the grab and go distribution started and are continuing. So hopefully, as we move into recovery, we can really move into more of a pantry model where people will be able to come in and select the foods that are appropriate for their families. And that will be a movement organically into them being able to select foods that are more culturally appropriate and more familiar to their cultures and what they're comfortable with preparing and eating. So hopefully that trend is in place.
I did just want to share quickly some questions that have either come up in the chat or that that got sent to me in advance that kind of run along the same lines. One was about, and I know, Mr. Ehrlich, some of your comments have touched on these already, but just to acknowledge, that with the impending hunger cliff that will come when the emergency allotments end for SNAP recipients, with some people going from $250 a month in benefits to just $20 a month. And at the same time, that realizing that inflation is causing higher prices for everything, including food, and just a sense of, how prepared is the county to address that level of need. And then to go along with something that was in the chat about that same crisis happening to food assistance providers who are buying more food that, where costs for food has gone up on their end as well. So just kind of those bookend issues.
So I totally get this. And, when you're doing the budget, which starts back in the late fall and continued through the first, part of this year, obviously the economic conditions are different. The inflation year over year for November is different than it is right now. So I'm going to assume that, we'll make the adjustments. Like I said before, we'll make the adjustments we have to make. This is an area we're not going to have people without food. And so to the extent we need to step up, then we'll figure out how we can step up.
I apologize if there's anyone that had a question in the chat that I missed. Feel free to raise your hand. I see Lucia has her hand up.
Yes, I also wanted to highlight the importance of investing in local farmers and making sure that this comes to the table. And I really appreciate the shift and the importance that has been given to fresh produce from Capital Area Food Bank, MANA. Everybody's moving fresh produce like nowhere before. And I really, really want to stress the importance of keeping this, because a lot of our communities are used to fresh produce, are used to cooking with fresh produce. So hopefully this is something that's going to stay on the table for a long time.
Yeah, we're actually looking at a couple of lots that the county owns and using them as, for community farms. And we've been talking with the Coiner Group in Silver Spring. I'm hopeful that I'm personally very interested in greenhouse agriculture, because I've seen places do some pretty remarkable things around greenhouses. And so we're going to be looking for opportunities to locate greenhouses in the county. They produce job opportunities, but they also produce food. So we can actually get 2 for 1 out of setting up a system of greenhouses. So I think you'll be seeing more as we start to unroll stuff and figure out how, what are the easy things for us to jump in now, and what are the things we need to plan a little bit more for.
Just because I see Netta's hand up next, and I did just want to point out just a lot of wonderful comments in the chat, thanking the county executive and the Food Security Task Force for all of their assistance during this time. So just to acknowledge that. And Netta, please.
Thank you very much, Anne Marie. Mr. County Executive, first of all, we just really wanted, on behalf of the task force, to thank you so much for announcing this office today and for creating it and for supporting it and for all the work you've supported to help us achieve throughout this time in order to help these providers who do the work and have done the work on a daily basis. It has been, and before vaccinations, before boosters, they were out there and they've just done phenomenal work and we appreciate it. I also really want to thank Dr. Earl Stoddard, who's on the call today. He saw the importance of this from the first day and helped us shepherded with all of his resources, intelligence, and leadership throughout the whole process. And we really appreciate him for all the work to get us here. So thank you both.
Thank you.
I saw Chris's hand for my city.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, my name is Chris. I'm the CEO for my city and founder. Just want to say thank you, County Executive. Those last couple of things you said is very important, I think. We run a 4-phase sustainability program, and we've been doing work with Montgomery County and some of the partners here. Mala, huge help, great connect. We've worked with her throughout the pandemic. We've distributed over 125 million pounds of food throughout this pandemic. Most of it is rescue food. So, I do believe there should be a little bit more emphasis on food waste. And we hope to see that your program, put some focus there and maybe divert some funding towards organizations that's really out there rescuing food. We have bought $0 in food and we've done over 125 million pounds. So that just shows that there's so much waste happening that if organizations like For My City and some of our other partners that are rescuing food can, really grow and develop their program, that we'll be able to help improve food insecurity a lot. A big part of our program that we're hoping to launch in Montgomery County is on-site composting. For My City is the first organization in the state of Maryland to bring on-site composting. So we see a lot of these food boxes going out, but we also see a lot of waste happening with some of these food boxes. Our technology takes any type of food waste and breaks it down into usable compost within 24 hours. So we're hoping that Montgomery County can look to divert some funding into creating some of these initiatives. The beauty about that also is this compost can go right back into your community gardens that you're thinking about, utilizing. So, hopefully that we can see a lot of programs that are focused on, that composting side and that regrowing of the food side and opening up some of these community gardens. Thank you for all your support, though. We love the plan that you guys are, the direction that you guys are heading.
So I'm really interested in what you're talking about. The county is going to go to mandatory composting this year.
Yes.
And that's a big deal. We're also looking at a digester, so we can take the food, run it through a digester, get something we can compost out of it as a solid material, but also get potentially green natural gas we could use to run some of our vehicles right now that are running on, dirty natural gas. So we think that, there's a good symbiotic relationship between things. I would, be more than happy to meet with you and to see what you're doing, because, there are multiple ways that we can actuate this. Right now,
I would love to.
Yeah, we're actually looking at the complete restructuring of our solid waste, the municipal waste facility at Shady Grove Road. We've gotten bids on every single aspect of that operation. It is primitive, backwards, and not what it's supposed to be. And because it's always been looked at as a way to feed the incinerator. I plan on starving the incinerator. So I want to feed other things. My goal is to feed other things that are more useful.
I can guarantee you our bid would come out much better than anything that you've gotten. I mean, right now we're in position of putting a 4,000 pound a day digester in Baltimore City, something that's never been done. And again, our machine turns any kind of food waste, including biodegradable products, into usable compost in a 24-hour cycle. We have a 4,000 pound a day machine sitting on site right now that we're waiting to launch. I would love to bring you down for you to see this machine and see the capabilities of what we can do.
Is this up in Baltimore?
This is right here in Baltimore City, yes. We're the only organization in the state of Maryland that has it.
I'd be more than happy to come up and probably bring some of my people to take a look at it. This is all useful and it fits with the kind of things we're trying to do down here.
Yes, and we were on that bill with Delegate Lorig Chakodian, that's pushing that food waste stuff. So she's come down and she's seen our facility. So you know, she's a big proponent of what we've been doing.
Good. I'll be happy to learn about it.
Yeah, I mean, I could get your contact information. Mine's pretty simple. We here at formycity.us. You could send me an email or have your rep send me an email there, or visit our website, formycity.us. That's the number 4, MYCITY.us. And then we could connect. I'd love to show you our machine and what it's capable of doing.
I'm going to put my contact information in here.
And Mr. County Executive, we're taking notes so we can also help facilitate.
Oh, can you do that, Nita? Nita, can you make sure he gets in touch with me and I get in touch with him?
Sure, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, guys.
So again, I've just been seeing just a lot more thankful statements and words of support in the chat, but no additional questions. I don't know if anyone else had a question that they were looking to share.
You guys know where to find me.
I would just add, will the budget be out tomorrow? I would expect that you will be happy about the farm to food bank program continuing. So won't get too far ahead, but that is something that county executive continues to support.
That is really wonderful. Thank you again so much for your time, for your support, for your leadership. We're really thrilled to have you here today and to have our food assistance providers and the greater food security community recognized for all of their incredible work during COVID and prior.
It is appreciated. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.